When you think of adjectives that describe you as a parent, what comes to mind? Devoted? Tired? Broke, maybe? Kids are expensive, and then they go to college and come back on the weekends and eat all your food. While my next guest may not be able to help you with the food part, she does have some information to at least save some cash. She is the school counseling specialist in the Student Services Department, and today she's going to help us understand how to get kids to college for free, or partially free, by sharing some lesser-known things about the Bright Futures Scholarship. Louisiana to Florida, first-generation college grad, unlocking opportunity, Holly Busse. Hello, hello.
Hello. Nice to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're here.
Thanks.
You spent your whole adult career in education, and
Yes.
I feel like just, the short time I've known you, you could work in a variety of roles.
Well, thanks.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that.
So
I like to think that too.
hair flip.
Yes, toss.
So what makes you so fired up specifically about helping, students find financing for college?
Well, I have always wanted to be in the helping professions. And so when my husband, believe it or not, said, "What about school counseling?" I said, why not? So I really did find my niche. And I just love working with students and with families. And in my current position, I don't get to work as much with them. I'm providing that training for the counselors so that they can make sure they can provide the information to the families. So, but I'm really excited about being here because, like I said, I really do enjoy providing that information to the kids and their parents.
That can be a big change for a family to know that that's an option. It can change the way that they think about the future, and I think it can change the way students view themselves in the context of school, because if you don't feel like you have a very hopeful after graduation life ahead of you, then during school, your focus is not going to be to perform academically or, be a good citizen or get volunteer hours. You're just not thinking with the end in mind when you're thinking, this is the peak of my life.
Right. Exactly. This is not, as I always like to say, high school and high school graduation is not the end, but it's the beginning. I look at it as a springboard, and that you're just going to be diving off into whatever might interest you. And so for some students, it is going to be college, but that might look like a 2-year program or a 4-year, your traditional 4-year. Could also be a technical college, like our own George Stone Technical College here is great. They've got wonderful programs that students can, within a year, they can actually be out there making some very good money. And in many cases, more money than I make with a master's degree. So,
wonk, wonk.
Yes, exactly. But when you need that plumber, you need that plumber,
Yes.
or you need that heating and air conditioning person. So, again, I think it is important that students be thinking about what they want to do post-high school, so going into that post-secondary phase of their life. And it doesn't have to always be that traditional college, but something, whether it's that career, whether it's military, whatever it might be. But when you are looking into continuing your education, it's definitely helpful when you have the funds to be able to do that and to assist you in that endeavor. And Bright Futures, I'm glad we're talking about Bright Futures because it's a great scholarship program.
And there's different types of Bright Futures scholarships. Can you talk about that?
Yes. So there are the Florida Academic and the Florida Medallion scholarships are ones that can be used regardless of where you want to go. So again, 2-year, 4-year college, a technical college, you can use the FAS or the FMS, Florida Academic, Florida Medallion. Then they have the Gold Seal Vocational Scholarship as well as the Gold Seal CAPE Scholarship. And the Gold Seal Vocational is really more for those students who are going to go into a career certificate type of program. So like George Stone Technical Center, Gold Seal Vocational cannot be used at a 4-year standard university. Then the Gold Seal CAPE is one that's only been around for a few years now. And it's similar to the vocational in the sense that you're going to use it for either a technical degree program or a certificate program, but you can, after you get an associate in science or an associate in applied science degree, you can then potentially be eligible to have additional 2 years worth of college to get your baccalaureate degree, your bachelor's degree, in either mostly in a bachelor's of science or a bachelor of applied science. So, for example, think nursing. Nursing is an example where if I went to a 2-year program, like at Pensacola State College, and I got my Associate of Science degree, and I've used that Gold Seal CAPE to be able to do that. Now, if I want to go on and get my Bachelor's of Science in Nursing, I can do that. And because I've had the Gold Seal CAPE, I might very well be eligible for being able to get the rest of my college, the rest of that nursing degree paid for, or that bachelor's part of the nursing degree paid for. So that's a little bit of the difference between the Gold Seal CAPE and the Gold Seal vocational. There are specific GPA and test score requirements that are needed for the different scholarships. I don't know if...
Yeah, do you know what, I mean, if you have that detailed information, first of all, I will be very impressed. But if you don't, even just like a roundabout for, you know, maybe an average across the board for all of the different types of Bright Future scholarships, because if students are anything like I was when I was a student, I tended to unqualify for myself for lots of things just because, you know, maybe I was like a nervous kid.
Right.
I say maybe. I was. I was. It's true. And so I feel like that maybe is the tendency of some people to go, oh, you know what, I don't qualify for this grant because I probably make too much money, or
Right.
I don't have a perfect GPA, or et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, can we talk about what the requirements are?
Sure. So for the Florida academic, that's your highest level, if you will, and you need to have a 3.5 GPA, and that's a Bright Futures GPA. So let me just explain that. When, you know, students in their student information system, they're going to see a weighted or an unweighted GPA. Bright Futures calculates the GPA a little bit differently. So what they see in their student information system is not going to necessarily be what the Bright Futures GPA is. And so counselors have the ability to go into the Bright Futures system and be able to pull a list of all of their students so that they can actually see what their Bright Futures GPA is. Okay? So you need a 3.5 GPA for the Florida academic. You need a 3.0 GPA for the Florida medallion. So what I always did when I was a school-based school counselor is pretty much if my students had in that range in their student information system, I was definitely prodding them and encouraging them to continue to do well in their classes so that they could maintain that level of their GPA. There are certain test scores as well. So, for example, for the Florida academic, a student would either need to have a 29 composite ACT score or a 1340 total score for the SAT. For the Florida medallion, they would need to have a 25 ACT composite score or a 1210 SAT composite or total score. The other requirement for those scholarships are community service hours or paid work hours. And that's something that is new from the legislature. Governor DeSantis just signed that June 27th, I think it was, of this year, so that students can either do community service work or they can get their hours through paid work hours. So for the Florida academic scholarship, you would need to have 100 community service hours or 100 paid work hours. For the Florida medallion scholarship, you need to have 75 community service hours or 100 paid work hours. And yes, I did say 100 because if you're going to use paid work hours, it has to be 100, regardless of the scholarship. So that's Florida Academic, Florida Medallion, Gold Seal Vocational, Gold Seal CAPE. They all have to have, if you're going to use work hours, you have to have 100 minimum. And you can't combine the two. So it's either community service hours or it's the paid work hours.
What if you're a self-employed kid?
If you're a self-employed kid, that's a very good question because the legislature has given each district the ability to make those determinations of what's going to be allowed as paid work. And we are actually in conversations right now with legal counsel to make that determination. Initially, I know we've talked about, do we accept any paid work or is it only if it has a W-2? So we're trying to kind of figure that out. The one thing that the legislature loves to do is they make these laws and then they say, here you go, districts, you all figure it out.
Yeah.
So we're waiting on additional guidance and so on and so forth. So
do you have the sovereignty to, quote, figure it out? Meaning like you as a district can decide, yes, babysitting counts as work, or making money off of YouTube or TikTok, because that's, a real thing.
That is a real thing for some of our students. Probably a lot more than I even know. So yes, we do have that sovereignty, that ability. It's just a matter of trying to make sure that when we make that decision, it's going to be fair and equitable, across the board. So that's why we always try and get all of our ducks in a row before
you make an announcement.
Yeah, before we make an announcement.
So it sounds like from the requirements that you're talking about, waiting until your last 6 months of your senior year would be a bad idea, no?
Very bad idea. Yes. In fact, students can begin getting their community service hours. We always said the summer before their freshman year in high school, so that they can begin to get volunteer hours at that time. Now, the paid work hours, since it just went into effect June 27th, it would have to be any work hours earned or completed after, that date. So, but yes, students really need to be working on this sooner rather than later because every little bit counts. And for students who are now taking high school classes in the 8th grade, their GPA is already starting in the 8th grade. So they come into 9th grade with a high school GPA already there. And so all of that counts. And when you look at funding for college, unless you end up with a complete full ride at a university or a college, which would include room and board, tuition, fees, a stipend for books, unless you get that, you're going to have to, what it's called stacking. So you're going to have to stack different funding sources together in order to have your complete cost of attendance met. And so Bright Futures is certainly one. I don't like to say it's an easy way, but it is a way, I think, for many of our students, most of our students, quite frankly, because I believe they all have the capacity and the ability to do this.
Well, from what you were describing of the requirements, I was thinking, okay, 3.0-ish GPA, although Bright Futures has its own calculation of that, but ish, like if it's in the neighborhood, we'll say. And then I'm really not that familiar with SAT or ACT scores, but I'm just going to, tell me if I'm wrong, say that if you're a mediocre student who is going to school with intention, meaning you're thinking about the future at least a little bit, it sounds like you could be in the ballpark of qualification for the Bright Future Scholarship.
Yes, I absolutely believe so. And I have seen that happen because when I was at, again, school-based counselor myself, I worked with the students from the time they were 9th grade. They knew about the Bright Future scholarships. And then I would monitor their progress. And when I saw a student was close, I'm pushing them and I'm showing them, look, this is where you are according to Bright Futures calculations. Let's go ahead. You need to make sure you're making, we need some more A's here. We need to make sure we're staying away from those C's. We want A's and B's, and just encouraging them so that they could see, yeah, this is really something that I can do. This is something I can get to. And if not, if they end up, or if they choose to go the more technical route, there's still a way for them to be able to get that funding, get to where they want to be, and at least, again, giving them some assistance.
So do students need to know what route they're going before they apply for the scholarship, meaning technical or traditional?
Not really. What we do is, as a district, we submit transcripts to the state 3 times a year. Bright Futures then evaluates them. So you may have a student who actually may qualify for both the FAS, the Florida Academic, let's just say, as well as the Gold Seal CAPE. Because the Gold Seal CAPE, the requirements are 30 community service hours or 100 paid work hours, and 5 post-secondary credits that articulate or 5 credits based on industry certifications that articulate towards post-secondary credit. So, for example, when students take these, when they're in these academies and they're taking these different technical type classes, and then they're taking their industry certs.
In high school?
In high school. Yes, in high school. So when they are earning their industry certs, there are certain industry certs or certifications that are worth so many college credits. And those college credits will now articulate to the college side of things, meaning that we can move them over to the college side, if you will. So let's say a student gets an industry certification and it's worth 3 college credits. And now let's say they get another industry certification that's worth another 3 college credits. Well, that student now has 6 college credits that can articulate. And because they have more than 5, they're going to be in the running for the Gold Seal CAPE scholarship as well. And so then it's a matter of whichever one is the highest, and also what the student wants to do. So remember I said that the Florida Academic and the Florida Medallion can be used anywhere. So if I, as a student, I've qualified for Florida Academic or Medallion, but I've also qualified for the CAPE, I'm going to be able to use the higher of the awards. And if the higher of the awards is the academic or medallion, then I can use that one, even though I may be going to PSC for 2 years to get a technical degree, or even going to George Stone if I wanted to go to George Stone and do a career certificate program. So it's
a lot of flexibility.
It is flexibility, yes.
That's really interesting. So it sounds like, to summarize the qualifications, mediocre student. Mm-hmm. I hate to say that, but right. I mean, sometimes you are, school is not.
It's not your thing. Right.
Yeah.
No, it's not. And
that's okay.
Yeah.
So a mediocre student, plus I think parents, right? I mean, that's who we're talking to.
Yes.
So maybe, they notice that their child is not particularly motivated for sitting in a classroom. I couldn't do it as me in this moment.
Right.
I can't sit at my desk at home for more than 20 minutes. So it's okay. It's okay, kids. There's hope for the future.
Right. She's successful, I promise.
I promise. I'm legit. So mediocre student, it has nothing to do with income bracket. You just have to attend a college or technical school in Florida. Am I all correct so far? And what about Florida virtual school students? Can they qualify also?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
I always like to include them because
they get left out.
They can get left out, and I want to make sure.
Yes.
Okay, so the application process, how long is it? Do you have to write an essay about yourself?
Yeah. No, the Florida Financial Aid Application, or FFAA, very simple. Maybe it'll take 15 minutes, if that long. It's a series of questions, and that's it.
Okay.
And students do need to complete that. What we do and what I tell our school counselors is get in front of every senior, which they typically do in the fall, go into the classrooms and provide some classroom instruction specifically on graduation and post-secondary and that sort of thing. But use that time to have them go ahead and complete the FFAA right then and there, because once it's done, then it's done and they don't have to worry about it. We want all students to complete that FFAA prior to graduation.
And does it require a parent signature?
Does not.
Okay, because I was thinking about foster kids. And so that is really, wow, I'm
Yes.
really impressed by this.
Yes.
Okay, so not to be negative Nancy over here,
Okay.
but can we go over some objections? Like, for example, a student says, oh, I don't need to do that because I'm going into the military.
Yes. And I heard that many times in our counselors. That's probably one of the biggest difficulties that our counselors face with our kids when they say, oh, I'm going into the military, I don't need to do this. Or I'm going to a school in Alabama, or I'm moving back to California and I'm going to go to school there. Okay, that's all great and fine. Take 15 minutes and complete the application, because, and you do have to be a resident of the state of Florida, right?
Which is, how long do you have to live here to be a resident?
12 months.
Oh, okay.
12 months to be a resident. So, but because what has happened, unfortunately, life happens sometimes, right? And what we have seen is that a student insists they're going into the military or they're going out of state, and then something happens. And now they're stuck, because if they do not apply for this scholarship prior to August 31st of the year they graduate, and we tell students before graduation because they're captive audiences then. But
I mean, we've lied to kids about worse.
yeah, right. I know.
It's fine.
I
It's
know.
fine.
You know, we're like, okay, but please, you're a captive audience. I have you here now but if they do not apply, they forfeit all opportunities of that scholarship. And what the legislature did a couple of years ago is they changed things so that if you apply prior to August 31st, really before graduation, everybody out there, and you don't use it, you have 5 years to reinstate it. So let's say you do go into the military and you're there for a year and something happens and it doesn't work out. Or you've gotten a scholarship to go play ball in Alabama and you bust your knee out a semester later or a year later or 2 years later or whatever. You now can come back, and if you have already applied for that scholarship, you can reinstate it. You have 5 years to do that. So that's huge.
Yeah.
But even when we explain that to students, a lot of times they don't listen. And that's not uncommon.
Teenager not listening?
I know.
What?
I
What are you
know,
talking
I
about? That
know.
never happens,
They need to
Holly.
stop having their own minds at that age. They need to just wait.
Yes. You know what's interesting about the 5-year expiration date is I, do meet a lot of children who are going to be YouTubers, because YouTubers
they
make
are.
millions of dollars.
Yes.
And, kids are like super creative and outside the box, more and more so. And I
They
just
are.
really love that about them. And so they may be thinking in that direction, media content of some
Right.
sort. And so if they apply for Bright Futures, they go the direction of media content, and then they realize that they actually have a passion for producing and directing, and that they would love to get some technical skills to support their business.
Right.
I think that is so valuable, because going from school environment to school environment, again, not for everyone. Sometimes having that break of maybe a gap year traveling to provide
Absolutely.
perspective, or, working provides perspective. Also having your own business, all these things that
Yes.
may be a part of their coming of age process. And so that the Bright Futures Scholarship can support it
Yes.
by them coming back to it. It's not necessarily coming back with your tail between your legs, but
Right.
a way that you can just have options as a young person
Yes.
who doesn't have a fully developed brain.
Yes.
Yes. That's science.
That is science. And yes, that is science. Not until you're 25 at least.
Yes, it's true. I wish it wasn't, but it is. It is true.
So, and yes, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because, there are so many different pathways to getting from point A to point B. And you may have actually A.1, point 2, point 3 in between. And so again, you want to always keep those bridges of opportunity open. And it's a 15-minute application. Complete it. Just complete it. If you end up not being eligible, well, you know what? That's okay, because there are other scholarships, grants, there are other ways to help get college paid for. But this is 15 minutes. It's 15 minutes of your time. You can spend 15 minutes scrolling through Facebook in, a blink of an eye. So you need to just do this, because you now have that potential ability. That's one of those bridges that you don't quite close.
Yes.
So,
don't burn it.
Don't burn it. Yes.
So an overwhelmed parent is listening to this and they're thinking, okay, I need to start this process, make sure we're tracking and logging volunteer / work hours correctly. Where do they go to? Where's the HQ for all of this?
Gotcha. That is going to be their school counselor in their school. They're going to go to the school counseling department and talk with whichever school counselor they have and say, hey, I want more information about Bright Futures, and I need to be able to log my hours. And some schools I know actually put a packet of information together, like in a little booklet form. But this information is also on the website. The forms have not been updated with this new legislation. Like I said, I'm still waiting. But the volunteer log form that is on our district website under guidance services, they can use that to log work hours at this point. And there's other information that is on there as far as Bright Futures. Again, has not been updated yet, unfortunately, because we're still waiting for some direction. But I'm hoping that's going to be soon.
Yeah, and it may be updated by the time this airs. So definitely
hopefully.
go check. Definitely go check. This has been such a good discussion. Thank you so much for sharing this information.
Thank you for having me. I've appreciated it.